Motorcycle culture has a way of creating characters larger than life, from Evil Knievel to Travis Pastrana to the Tuttle family. There's something about this two-wheeled world that pushes people to be bolder, more creative, and willing to turn pure passion into a livelihood. Throughout motorcycle history, young riders have built entire livelihoods out of nothing but that passion. The Harley brothers started in a small shed with motorized bicycles. John Britton hand-built race machines that took on the very top of the racing world. But Jesse James was different. He didn't begin by building motorcycles. He stepped into this world on a path entirely his own, and from a cramped corner of a Long Beach shop, he created West Coast Choppers, turned it into a symbol recognized across America, and then watched the very empire he built come crashing down. By the late 70s and early 80s, chopper culture was riding high. Fueled by the imagery and attitude of Easy Rider, long, stretched-out customs became the poster children of American freedom. They were loud, they were rebellious, and for a while, it felt like the scene could last forever. But by the time Jesse James was coming of age, the momentum had slowed. The trends that once shook the industry were starting to feel stale. A lot of the bikes on the road looked the same, and the spark that had made the movement so electric seemed to be fading. Still, motorcycle culture has always had a knack for producing those larger-than-life characters, the ones who see the world differently and who refuse to accept the status quo. Jesse was cut from that cloth. He met motorcycles the way a lot of us did, young, wide-eyed, and ready to ride. His first was a little 50cc dirt bike. Nothing fancy, but enough to light a fire. And once that fire started, it didn't stay contained. For Jesse, it wasn't just about twisting the throttle. It was about taking things apart, figuring out how they worked, and putting them back together in ways that made them faster, sharper, better. Jesse's fascination with two wheels quickly turned into something more hands-on. While most kids were just riding their bikes, Jesse was tearing his apart, repainting, swapping parts, and putting them back together with his own twist. One of his earliest triumphs was a 1940s Schwinn bicycle he painstakingly restored, a project that sold for $850, a small fortune for a young man just testing his skills. That sale wasn't just about the money. It was proof that his ideas had value. He took that confidence into the real world, landing a job at Performance Machine in Southern California. There, he was tasked with creating the Corbin Warbird body kit for Harley's FXR models, a gig that forced him to think about form, function, and the kind of bold design that would turn heads. Next came a spot at Boyd Coddington's famed hot rod shop, where Jesse sharpened his abilities even further. Welding, hand-shaping metal, precision CNC machining. These weren't just skills. They were old-world craftsmen's tools, nearly forgotten in an industry chasing bolt-on shortcuts. But Jesse wasn't impressed with the Harley-Davidson scene of the time. Too safe, too repetitive, too predictable. He wanted risk. He wanted creativity. And most of all, he wanted to build motorcycles that felt alive, machines with attitude, built by hand, and impossible to ignore. By the early 90s, Jesse had a toolbox full of skills, but no real brand to call his own. One day, almost on a whim, he sketched out a logo, a bold, stylized iron cross with the words West Coast Choppers cut through the middle. It wasn't for a company, it wasn't even meant to be serious. It was just a personal emblem that, to him, captured the rebellious spirit of California's custom bike scene. Friends started asking for t-shirts with that logo. At first, Jesse had a few printed as a joke. But those shirts started popping up all over Long Beach, then all over Southern California's biker scene. The logo took on a life of its own before a single official West Coast Choppers motorcycle even existed. In 1992, Jesse decided to make it real. With no business plan, hardly any tools, and just a rented corner in a friend's garage, he hung up a hand-painted sign, West Coast Choppers. At the start, it wasn't about cranking out complete bikes. He was fabricating one-off parts, fenders, gas tanks, frames, for local riders who appreciated the kind of handmade craftsmanship you couldn't buy from a catalog. And Long Beach itself shaped the DNA of the brand. The neighborhood was gritty, alive with tattoo shops, punk bands, and outlaw biker clubs. The bikes, and the parts, coming out of that little corner shop reflected that same edge. Raw, unapologetic, and unmistakably built for riders who wanted something real. West Coast Choppers didn't stay a quiet little shop for long. Jesse's designs, especially the CFL drop seat frame, were game changers. Longer, lower, and dripping with attitude, the CFL set a new standard for modern choppers. It would evolve into the CFL 2 in 2008, then the CFL 3, each one pushing the style forward while keeping that old-school soul intact. But it was television that truly lit the fuse. In 2001, Discovery Channel aired Motorcycle Mania, a one-off special following Jesse through the process of building custom bikes. Viewers saw more than just metal and machines. They saw the personality, the chaos, and the artistry behind every weld. The response was electric. A year later came Monster Garage. Jesse at the helm of a crew transforming ordinary vehicles into wild creations in just 7 days. It was part fabrication, part circus act, and it pulled in everyone from hardcore gearheads to casual channel surfers. Soon celebrities were lining up for a piece of WCC Kid Rock. Keanu Reeves, Brad Pitt, and Shaquille O'Neal, whose custom chopper stretched over 11 feet, with controls and bars built to match his frame. The El Diablo series turned heads with razor-edged frames and fire-themed paint. The Camel Roadhouse Streamliner proved Jesse could do understated just as well. Meanwhile, the Iron Cross logo exploded. On shirts, hats, stickers, it was everywhere. You didn't need to own a WCC bike to wear it. By the mid-2000s, it wasn't just a brand, it was a street-level badge of rebellion recognized across America. While West Coast Choppers was riding its wave, another shop across the country was making its own splash, Orange County Choppers in New York. OCC blew up on TV with American Chopper, turning custom bike building into mainstream entertainment. But their approach couldn't have been more different. OCC specialized in big theatrical theme bikes, the 911 Tribute Fire Bike with its chrome and memorial details, the Black Widow with its spiderweb frame. Their builds were all about spectacle, big unveilings, and, maybe most famously, the constant family drama between Paul Sr., Paul Jr., and Mikey. It was reality TV gold, tailor-made for a mass audience that liked the idea of choppers but didn't necessarily live the lifestyle. WCC was the opposite. Jesse kept the spotlight on the craft, the welding, the shaping, the raw design work that defined real custom building. His bikes weren't meant to please everyone. They were for riders who wanted something dangerous, rebellious, and rooted in old-school biker DNA. Among serious builders and long-time riders, WCC's work earned more respect. The fit, the finish, the attitude, it all felt more authentic. In a world where a lot of custom was turning into TV theater, West Coast Choppers still built motorcycles that could hold their own on the street and in the culture. By the late 2000s, the tide that had carried West Coast Choppers to the top started to pull back. The 2008 economic crash hit the custom bike world hard. When the bottom falls out of the market, a $100,000 plus chopper isn't just a luxury. It's an impossible sell. Trends were shifting too. Riders wanted leaner, more rideable customs, bobbers, cafe racers, and reworked Harleys, instead of the long, stretched-out showpieces that had defined the power chopper era. In 2007, another blow landed. The California Air Resources Board fined WCC $270,000 for selling non-emissions compliant motorcycles. Jesse claimed he hadn't known about the regulatory changes, but the fine stung, both financially and publicly. Meanwhile, the Iron Cross logo that had once been a badge of rebellion was losing its edge. When it showed up on mass-produced bicycles sold at Walmart, hardcore fans saw it as selling out. Merchandise that had once flown off the shelves started to stagnate. And then came the personal scandals. Jesse's marriage to Sandra Bullock collapsed in a very public fashion, followed by more tabloid-fueling relationships. Each headline chipped away at the brand's image. In 2010, Jesse shut down the Long Beach headquarters and moved to Austin, Texas, framing it as a fresh start. But the golden era of West Coast choppers was over. The shirts, the celebrity builds, the wait lists, years long, all gone, leaving only a loyal few and the legend of what once was. West Coast choppers now lives more in memory than in metal. It was a snapshot of a very specific moment in American chopper history, a moment that ran the full arc from raw, handmade passion to a television-fueled boom, to the kind of overexposure that strips away the soul of what made it special in the first place. In the beginning, it was about rebellion, about taking steel and fire and shaping them into something no one else had. Then it became a brand, a symbol recognized far beyond the biker world, riding high on the back of TV fame and celebrity demand. But success has a way of changing the game. When creativity takes a back seat to production schedules, when the logo matters more than the work, the spirit that built it all can fade. Jesse James himself has admitted it. When he closed the Long Beach shop, he said he wanted to get back to what life was before building bikes for TV. Back when the shop floor smelled like metal and paint, and the only deadlines were the ones you set for yourself. That's the legacy of West Coast choppers. Proof that one man, a torch, and a vision can build an empire. And a reminder that holding on to the soul of it is the hardest part of all. West Coast choppers wasn't just a brand, it was an entire era, a time when the chopper stood as a star of American pop culture, when a man with a torch and a pair of grease-stained hands could turn a dream into an empire. But like any fire that flares too fast, if you can't keep the wind that started it, it will fade. Jesse James saw it happen, from the bright lights of television fame to closing the shop doors, with only a handful of loyal fans and the memory of a blazing outlaw age left behind. How about you? Have you ever seen or fallen in love with a West Coast chopper? Do you think Jesse James is a misunderstood legend or proof of the trade-off between art and commerce? If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button. Share your thoughts and your own stories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next journey into the 2- and 4-wheeled legends that shaped America's automotive culture.